No echo today. No,
All
it
right.
sounds good.
Awesome.
I'm supposed to use a new microphone soon, but I'm not. I'm using a new mixer, so my voice should sound richer and fuller.
Oh
Or
yeah.
at least it should be able to be heard, even if I'm off the mic a little bit. So that was the hope. So, because normally if I move over here, so hopefully it's picking it up and leveling it out. Anyway, speaking of leveling out, yeah, we're going to get into the Phoenix thing because it's a mess. I mean, it's an
Yeah,
absolute mess.
I wish I had $1 for every member of the league hierarchy or ex-NHLer that has thrown a barb at the city of Glendale, because it's just been, Twitter has been inundated with, Glendale. The city of Glendale is a bunch of idiots and things of that nature. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, this is in a lot of ways maybe the NHL's out, and it's horrible to say, but
But I don't think they want this out.
oh, they don't want this out at all. No,
Yeah.
there's no question about that. They want to stay in Phoenix and they want to keep the team in Phoenix, but they've really gone out of their way to try to make that happen over the years, and now this is basically this is like Phoenix saying they don't want them there.
Well, it's Glendale saying.
Glendale saying they don't want them in Arizona. Sorry.
But there are other scenarios that they could stay in that area and not have anything to do with that arena in Glendale. And honestly, if they have the Gila River Arena there with no tenant, I think the city of Glendale is probably going to end up losing more money than they would if they're paying the money that they're paying to the Coyotes to be the tenant there. So I think it's an untenable situation for Glendale. They made a bad contractual signing, and that arena was a bad idea from the start. It should have never been built there.
Yeah. Now we're really in a spot. So I guess we should just get right into it. Kevin's going to join us hopefully today. He's covering in Tampa right now. I'm back home for the weekend. I'm going to go back to Chicago for Game 6 and then Tampa for Game 7 if necessary.
You'll be going to Tampa.
Yeah. I'm not going to Tampa for Game 5. I think I'm going to Tampa for Game 7 too. That's why I'm not going for Game 5 because I don't really want to pay for 3 trips to Tampa. So that's what I'm thinking too. I think we're looking at a 7-game series at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But let's start the show, and we'll start with that. Here we go. Today is the
12th.
12th. Correct. Awesome.
2 weeks from today is the NHL draft in Sunrise.
God. How many weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
26th and 27th.
That's like
insane.
In 2013 when the when the Cup happened. Chicago won the Cup. I had the 1 day off, and then I had to drive to New Jersey the next day to cover the draft.
Yeah, it was right away.
At least I was in a groove.
Yeah, and get this, Zach, you'll love this. The day before the draft, the 25th of June, that is the day when NHL teams can start talking to unrestricted free agents. That's the window.
Right.
So from the day that we both get to Sunrise, it's going to be rumor central about free agents, not only trades, but free agents up until July 1st.
Oh, yeah, and the buyout period starts as soon as the Cup is handed out pretty much. So that's another one. I mean, buyouts, and that's the word of today, right? So, yeah, let's get right into it. Lots to talk about here. It's the 16th, we said, right? It's 12th. I don't know what I'm doing. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday. Let me try it again.
Yeah, it got muffled there for a second when you said that.
I just went to another place. My voice went to another place. Okay, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, June 12th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Ty Anderson.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you Monday through Friday at random times this time of year, but normally at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And today we're at 2 p.m. We're hoping to have Kevin Allen join us soon. I'm a little muffled all of a sudden, you said? What is going on with my mic? Hold on.
It goes. There it goes.
To stand right here. I'll stand right here.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So this is, so we're in it now because we got lots going on. Let's start with the NHL final because I want to fill that in right now. We're at a best-of-3 series now. It's been fun so far. It's been dramatic in a lot of ways. It has had plenty of storylines. And, man, the goalie situation it just gets weirder and weirder all the time. Yesterday, the Lightning came out and basically implied that Bishop would be back sometime in the series, and today they sort of came out and said that he won't be back. So I've decided that we need to start reading John Cooper differently. Like, I think that everyone's looking at John Cooper like a normal NHL coach, and he's not. He's a lawyer, so he's handling things. He's playing everyone like a fiddle, so essentially. And early on, we saw, there was I really didn't think Bishop was going to play in Game 3. I'm still shocked he did, and he may have hurt himself enough in Game 3 to knock himself out for the rest of the series. But then, everybody assumed he was going to play in Game 4 because he actually looked better in warm-ups before Game 4 than he did before Game 3, during the day at least, the morning skates. So now here we are. He's saying that he's not going to return, which probably means he's going to play Game 5. He's probably going to start Game 5. That would be my prediction. And the funny thing is the Blackhawks just don't care about it. You had talked to Blackhawk players, and they really think this is a whole lot of nothing, and whoever goes in goal, I don't think it matters. I actually think, I don't know about you guys, but I actually think Vasilevsky gives him a better chance to win. Even if both are relatively healthy. I mean, I know Bishop has played really well, but I think Vasilevsky can steal you a game maybe more than Bishop can. Mike, thoughts?
I think that's debatable. I mean, I think Vasilevsky is the more athletic of the two goaltenders. I thought he played pretty well on Wednesday. I don't think he was at fault for the loss. The team picked it up defensively in front of them. They limited Chicago to 2 shots in the first period. I mean, there's something to say about Bishop. There was some doubts about him going into the playoffs, but he came through big in Game 6 and Game 7 against Detroit. He did pretty well against Montreal. Did pretty good in Game 5 and 7 against the Rangers. So I think that, and Vasilevsky hasn't proved that he can come up big like Bishop did in those series. So I think it's a little bit of a decline, but there's room for him to make an impact. I agree with what you're saying. I think this is a little bit of gamesmanship on the part of Cooper. I mean, I said yesterday during the Buzzcast with Russ Cohen that I thought that playing Vasilevsky and was essentially almost like Tampa was playing with house money. They were up 2-1. Bishop, if he does play tomorrow, he would have had 3 days of treatment on whatever injury it is, if it's something that's a day-to-day type of thing. And it gives, after that game, even if they lost, they would have home ice advantage, and it would be 2-2. So it was in a way, it was a no-lose. I mean, you would love to come back 3-1, but going back home 2-2 was not the worst situation. Now, if he doesn't play, if he hurt himself in Game 3, then essentially Bishop, shot his wad there, and that's it, and Vasilevsky is playing the rest of the series. And if that's the case, then they're going to have to find out whether this 20-year-old can handle the pressure, because they really don't have any other option.
Yeah, what do you think of that, Zach?
I mean, I look at Vasilevsky's, his first game here, and there was some, he had some wide-eyed moments, if you will, where he looked like a 20-year-old on the stage. I thought his rebound control was a little suspect there, but it got better as the game went on. And I mean, that's to be expected when you've ridden the pine as much as he has these first 4 rounds. So building off that, if he can keep those to a minimum, he can continue to play with this sort of poise. Yeah, he can definitely steal a game or two for the Lightning, and that's really all they need at this point. They just need 2 more wins, and I think he's a good enough goaltender where you can get that out of him. It's just a matter of accepting the stage and realizing what's at stake here. And I think he sort of got that as time went on. He didn't look bothered by it. But there are a few moments throughout that game where you were watching him, and you'd see a shot go right into his chest, and it'd go 12 feet to the left, and if you think if Chicago has a player there, that's a goal. So
I mean that's
something that was a concerning sort of moment for Tampa Bay for sure. But I think he's got the smarts and the mental makeup to get past that, and that'll come with more ice time.
He's really quick. I mean, he's very quick. He's got immense quickness. He reminds me a lot of Bobrovsky in a lot of ways. Same kind of goal. He does go down early, which I think the Hawks were starting to pick up on a little bit. That's definitely, I think, part of the scouting. They haven't really scouted him that much in the first game. You sort of saw that they didn't really. There was one instance where Patrick Kane was kind of ragging the puck and took a shot, and you realized after he shot, it just looked like he said, "Oh man, if I held on to that a little bit longer," because the goalie was down. He had a chance to make a move, and he sort of just got rid of it. The same thing with Bobrovsky early in his career was the whole thing that if you held on to the puck long enough, he would go down. You would do top of the net would open up. He's not as big as Vasilevsky. I mean, and not as big as Bishop. So, I'm not many goalies are. So, but I agree. The first couple rebounds he had in that game, Ty, were definitely bobbled. And he only had 2 shots in the first period, and both of them were bobbled. But then as the game went on, he made a couple really nice blocker saves, just off, really quick shots. He looked composed. I mean, this is definitely a Stanley Cup of attrition if there ever was one in my mind, because the Hawks are absolutely running out of gas. There's no two ways about it. You're watching them in the 4 games. In each game, their defense has looked worse and worse. And in this last game, they gave the puck away so many times, and they haven't held leads in this series very often. That also is playing into it. This is a team that it's better to be a tired team when you're holding a lead than it is when you're chasing the game, and they're chasing these games. This is taking its toll, and fortunately for them, there haven't been any double or triple overtime games yet, or else the Hawks would really be in trouble. I think they looked really out of sorts in that last game, and it was funny because Tampa really shouldn't have won Game 3, and Chicago shouldn't have won Game 4. They flip-flopped the games that they should have won. This series probably should be tied at 2, but it's just the way it got here.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, Zach, is that Johnny Oduya, who a lot of people expected to play limited or at least less ice time that he had throughout the playoffs, with the injury that he has. Now we don't know specifically, but the speculation is that it's a hand injury. He played the second most amount of minutes in game 4. He played 25 minutes. He played more than Seabrook. He played more than Yarmulson. So I think that is a sign that Keith and Seabrook are starting to feel the wear and tear, because
I don't know that Keith is, but I think Seabrook is, and I think Jarmelson is too.
Yeah.
But Keith seems to be some sort of a freak of nature type player. He seems to be able to play the whole game. But Seabrook was definitely showing it, and it just and the offense too. Even the forwards trying to get back in the back check wasn't there. It's definitely taking its toll, and then you combine that with the goaltending situation in Tampa, which is falling apart. This is a war of attrition. This series is crazy, and it's very hard to predict. I mean, my feeling the whole time has been Tampa can win 3 games in this series, but I don't see them eliminating Chicago. I just can't see Chicago letting themselves be eliminated by Tampa.
Well, we talk about last game, Chicago's defense wearing down. I think one of the big things you notice is that final 2 minutes where it was just Tampa Bay just wreaking havoc all over the Chicago end. Their defensemen are gassed, their forwards are gassed, but Corey Crawford is keeping them in it. And I think that's really, like, you look at this early series and early playoffs rather. Crawford was on the bench. This might be playing into his favor now, where he doesn't have as much tread on the tires as everyone else in that roster, especially he had the injury in the regular season as well. So I look at this and I say that final few moments there, that was all Corey Crawford. I mean, if not for him, that's a tied game, and who knows what happens in overtime, especially given how exhausted Chicago has looked all series long. I think that Game 7 series with Anaheim took a lot out of them, and who, it obviously was, that's Anaheim, the most physical team in the league probably. So I think that this is on Corey Crawford right now. And we talk about Keith, we talk about Seabrook, Kane, Taves, all those guys, but this is Corey Crawford's show right now. This is where he looks like he's one of the few Blackhawks players that's not absolutely exhausted. So I think this is really what it comes down to with the Chicago Blackhawks. Yeah,
that's a great point. I mean, and it is Corey Crawford's series. I think the interesting thing about this series, I was talking to a pro scout about this in Chicago, is that the 2 other times Chicago went to the Stanley Cup Finals, they got there against 2 pretty physical teams in Philly and Boston. Both were pretty physical teams that wanted to pound them. Tampa doesn't hit. They're not a checking team, and that I think is actually working against the Hawks in some ways. Like because it feels as if they're a team hasn't been woken up enough to get angry enough to get to where they had to get to. You saw in the Boston series and the Flyers series where there were moments when the Hawks got mad, they were a better team. They're playing a little bit. They're really playing soft pond hockey at times.
Well, the thing is that in both of those series, they were the faster team, so they could avoid a lot of those hits because of their speed. I think Tampa is equally as fast, or maybe even faster than Chicago. So
it feels like they're faster. It feels, at least at this point, based on endurance or whatever's left in the tank, Tampa's faster.
No, I think Chicago is going to benefit from the extra day. I mean, it was Wednesday for Game 4, now Saturday for Game 5, so they'll benefit in the short term, with that rest. But honestly, it's weird because I'm being a sports fan. I'm watching the NBA final and I'm watching the Stanley Cup final, and there's some similarities here because you've got a team like the Hawks basically playing with a short bench like Cleveland is. They've got the superstars like LeBron. Golden State is the deeper team. They're the quicker team. They're the more offensive team like Tampa is. And in this situation, Cleveland is getting worn out like Chicago is getting worn out. And it's just a question of whether both teams, both Golden State in the NBA and Tampa Bay in the NHL, get the series long enough where that fatigue becomes a factor in Game 6 or Game 7.
Interesting comparison. Although this basketball sport you speak of, I'm not familiar with it, but I do get the comparison, for sure. Hello, Kevin.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm back from the Tampa Bay Lightning practice. No Ben Bishop as we suspected, and although they sound a little more positive than they've sounded in the past. This was all planned when they told him not to play last game. They said he was going to take 3 days off, and they reported that he's getting better. So I think that's. I think they assume he's going to be back, but that's just an assumption also on my part.
Okay, and yeah, it's so. I mean, everything we've thought about John Cooper, I think, has played everybody like a fiddle to a degree. This is going to be a. I mean, I'm looking at the opposite now of whatever they're saying is possibly being the case.
Yeah.
So maybe, it's been very intriguing, and we were talking about. I was talking about how I felt like before you got on how Chicago's defense did look tired to me in the last game for the first time. Not Keith, but Seabrook looked tired. Oduya played a lot of minutes. Jarmelson looked tired. There were a lot of giveaways. Tampa looks faster, even though they're not faster, but they look faster. So I think that's another sign of exhaustion a little bit on Chicago's side of things. Tampa definitely had the speed advantage, I thought. And I think, I think at this point, this is a 7-game toss-up series, it feels like. Are you there?
Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I don't even think that.
Kevin is lost in thought. There, he's coming back now. But anyway, he doesn't think that.
It's a long pause.
It's a long pause, but he'll be back. Yeah, I just I don't know. 7 games. It seems like I do really believe like there was a rallying cry after Game 4 from the Hawks in the Hawks locker room that was saying like they really want to win a Stanley Cup at home. They haven't won a Stanley Cup at home yet. So I think that's going to play into this. I think that we're going to see something here. For Game 5, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Chicago comes out and tries and really, really pushes hard to win this.
Well, I mean, throughout the playoffs, Zach, Tampa has been underwhelming at home. They've been the best road team in the NHL in the playoffs, but at home, they had the chance to close it out against the Rangers in Game 6 and got walloped. They lost Game 5 against Detroit and came back and won 6 and 7. So they've had a history so far this playoff of stumbling at the Amalie Arena. So I mean it's not out of the question that Chicago could do that. But that being said, I don't put it above Tampa if they're down 3-2 on Monday to go into the United Center and win a game and force a Game 7. I mean I grant you that Chicago has the assassin's mentality of you get a chance to kill them, you'll kill them. But I think Tampa has proved that they've got character as well, and they could get to a Game 7 if they're down 3-2.
Must be nice to be in a situation where you say, we keep winning on the road, let's win at home. Like that's
No, I know.
Not a bad situation with Chicago Blackhawks.
I know. I agree with you completely. I mean, the Hawks are that arrogant of a team right now. I mean, they really are. There's a definite cockiness to them. Hey, Kev. Got you back. We see you. I don't know if you see us or hear us. We have you, Kevin. Hey. And he's back. Kevin Allen. Okay, well, we'll see if Kevin hears us or not. Do you hear us, Kev? Hello, Kevin. Hello. Okay. He's
Well,
lost. Let's move it. Hey, Kevin, can you hear us? Okay, we have to tell him that we can see him.
But we can't hear him.
Yes, Mike, can you jump into the chat?
Yeah.
You can hear him. He can't hear us, apparently. Let's watch Kevin eat for a while. Kevin. Okay, he can. You tell him. We can see you, Kevin. Yep, there you go. We can hear him too. I don't think he can hear us or see us. All right, so let's move on to Arizona a little bit here as we try to figure out what's going on with Kevin here. And all right, so just when I got used to calling them the Arizona Coyotes, which was last few hours that I figured this out, because I haven't been able to call them the Arizona Coyotes at all. Now the latest word is now that they might go back and they might play this year in Phoenix. If you're following this or not, but they've been talking with the Suns about the original building they played in, which at the time was, I believe, called the America West. Right?
Yeah.
For the good old airline, which is the no longer existing airline of American West. And they left the Phoenix Arena. There were bad sight lines and I guess other things, but they can obviously still play hockey in there. It might be the best thing that's ever happened to this team because it puts them downtown again, which is a great thing probably for their fans. They'll probably love this. I really want to get Kevin's thoughts on this, but when he gets back, this whole situation has just turned into such a. I mean, Glendale just can't cancel a contract like this. I don't think. I just don't see how they're going to pull it.
They used an obscure piece of Arizona state law that was woven into the contract to apparently I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on the webcast, but essentially. It was how the $15 million that they are paying the Coyotes to run the arena, how it's allocated. And they're saying that it was allocated to pay down the debt of the Coyotes, and that's abrogating the lease agreement. So they voted, I think it was 5-2, the city of Glendale, to break the lease, and the lease is now broken. And I know that Anthony LeBlanc, the owner of the Coyotes, has made a couple appearances on the radio saying that they're going to put a temporary injunction or file a temporary injunction or in a restraining order in a sense so the team can play at the Gila River Arena this year. And if that is upheld, then it could be a case and a $200 million counter lawsuit. And if that's the case, then this could run on for months or years. But yes, there are scenarios that they could go back to. It's now the Talking Stick Resort Arena, which is where that's a mouthful.
We're so close now. We're getting so close to my G Your Hair Smells Terrific Arena. Exactly. We really are. We're almost there.
But the thing is, Zach, is there's talk about Gila River apparently is an Indian tribe in that area. They have a casino in that area, and they're talking about building an arena on their property. There's also talk of an 18,000 seat, I think it was, arena in Scottsdale, which has always been the argument. They said that Scottsdale was the center of where the hockey fans were. It was Phoenix and west of the city in Scottsdale, and I have friends who live in Scottsdale, and I know there's a lot of money in Scottsdale and a lot of Canadian expatriates in Scottsdale, so it would make sense. This is a disaster. It's a complete disaster, but the league is not going to walk away from Arizona. I think they're going to find a way to keep this team in Arizona. It doesn't mean in Glendale, but they're going to find a way to keep them in Arizona.
I don't know. What do you think, Ty?
I mean, everyone I talked to said that Glendale is so out of the way from where they should be, in Arizona, whether it's in Phoenix or Scottsdale. The overwhelming feeling, no matter what they say, is that Glendale is not the place for it. It's just not a good location. It's sort of out of the way from everyone during rush hour traffic, so you wouldn't want to go near that area. So that's one of the things you hear about Arizona. But, I mean, we talked about this before the show started. I mean, is there a better out for the NHL? Probably not. I mean, that's something that they have to consider here as well. I know they didn't want to do it with Atlanta, and they were sort of forced to because that was the moment where they realized we're never going to have a better chance to get out of Atlanta than we do right now when they went to Winnipeg. So I think that's something that they have to consider here. But again, this is this has been the hill that Gary Bettman wants to die on, really. I mean, he has been so adamant that the team remains in Phoenix, remains in Arizona. He wants it to work there. I mean, it hasn't worked. It worked when the team was winning, in 2012, but that's been 1 year out of how many now where they've just struggled. They struggled with attendance, with the product on the ice. But at the same time, I don't think you want to give up on Arizona because Austin Matthews is from Arizona. I mean, you're starting to see players now from Arizona. Austin Matthews is probably going to be the top pick, next year. You also have Arizona State has a Division I men's hockey team now. That's first time that's happened in a very long time. I mean, or ever, I think, actually. So
no, it's for sure.
It's starting to grow.
And they're playing in the arena too. That's the other crazy thing. They're playing in the arena.
So it's tough when the NHL market isn't growing the way you want it to. But you're starting to see the youthful pieces in Arizona, whether in Austin Matthews or the guys going to be playing in Arizona State or the next crop that's going to come up in the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, it's starting to make an impact. So I think that's why they're so hesitant to move out of Arizona, and that makes sense.
And it does. Maybe we should send Trevor Lewis and Wendell Clark in the spirit of the Indians.
Oh, nice. Dave Lewis.
Sort of a chord.
Yeah, no.
I don't know. I'm just saying. I say this because I've been watching this. By the way, the most incredible documentary of all time. I'm a big Ken Burns documentary fan. I know you are too, Mike.
Yes.
But the one, the Wendell and Clark one, the two, is the Wendell and Clark. The Lewis and Clark one, that's awesome. The Lewis and Clark one, is just awesome.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a Ken Burns documentary that I thought was bad. I mean,
but the Lewis and Clark one you got to check out. It's like 3 hours long, and you realize just as an aside, what an incredible thing that was that they did, and how.
But the situation is right now is that first of all, there was talk of the Frozen Four going to Arizona. There was talk of the World Junior going to Arizona.
World Junior is a big one, yeah.
Yeah. Now the thing is, we don't know whether those plans are scrapped or whether that doesn't really matter because that arena will still be there. I mean, that arena now. If the Coyotes move back into the city of Phoenix for as a stopgap until a new arena is built, or if that's the case, then Glendale is stuck with an albatross around their neck. They were hoping that they could get the Coyotes to cut a better deal, and the Coyotes are basically saying, go screw yourself, because we got this deal, we negotiated this for years and years, finally got a deal that helped us out, and now, you want to reconsider because, the deal is not good for Glendale, but they're the ones who negotiated it, so... I have no sympathy for the city of Glendale, but in terms of that team there, right now the only area that could take a team immediately if the disaster scenario came up would be Quebec City. The building is ready, they could take it. But I don't think the NHL wants to move a team on a temporary basis to Quebec City. They don't want to move it to Kansas City where there's a building. Las Vegas is not ready. Seattle's not ready. They mentioned Portland as a possibility. It would be a haphazard move if they moved that team really quickly. It would look bad upon the NHL. And I heard an interesting point yesterday. With them talking about expansion and then talking about a $500 million expansion fee, how does it look if a team is fiscally in a problematic state like Arizona and they go someplace for nothing? It sort of undercuts the $500 million expansion fee. Why would these cities pay for it when they could get
What if you would let the people from Quebec just buy the team? What if you were to, because they would do it. If you just took the Quebec owners and you say, okay, buy the team for twice what the current Arizona owners paid for it.
I don't think the NHL wants another market right now in Canada. I think if Quebec,
but that's the only place you could put it where you could sell out a season this quickly. And if you put it in Kansas City, you would have all kinds of ticket problems. Seattle would have ticket problems. You just have Vegas would have huge ticket problems, I think. But you put it in Quebec.
The building's not ready. Apparently, the building is not ready in Las Vegas. So
I know, but in Quebec they could sell it out. That would sell out in a few minutes, and I bet the owners of the Arizona team now could double their money quickly. And you're talking about it would end up being about $500 million. The NHL doesn't get that money, which is and the owners don't get that money, which is true. But they do get a solid franchise in a solid place they wouldn't have to worry about.
But Barraway tried to get into the NHL with the Islanders. He couldn't. Now he gets into the NHL with the Coyotes, and now in this scenario would be in a way forced to sell
Yeah.
the team to Quebec City. I mean, it's not really fair to him. I mean, this is
No, it's not fair to him for sure. No, I mean they're gonna try everything out they possibly can, and like, maybe at the end of the day they play in Phoenix while this gets worked out. It does seem like it's an option from what I was reading that they actually could play there. So if they can play there, I just think they should. I think they should. I mean,
Well,
go ahead, Ty.
I mean, also there's a sort of an elephant in the room here with this as well, is that the NHL schedule cannot be released until this is figured out. And that was supposed to happen in about, I think, 3 weeks to a month's time. So, I mean, they need to figure out the resolution soon because they got to get these dates for next season booked up.
Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. The NHL schedule comes out right around the draft.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's you're right. That's crazy. And they. I mean, this will come to a head in the next week or so. It has to, but.
And it's not simply something you can do where you replace, like say for example, the team plays in Quebec City next year. You can't just replace Quebec on the schedule with Arizona because you have teams that are on West Coast road trips that are going Dallas, Arizona, LA. They can't go Dallas to Quebec City to LA. So you can't do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, we're gonna have to keep an eye on it. I'm hoping for the fans of the Coyotes because I know there's a lot of them that watch this show and that come to Hockey Buzz. I'm always pulling for you guys because I do believe in the market. It is not a small market. It's the size of Philadelphia. This area. This is a big area. And I just think that I don't think they've ever gotten a fair shot. I just feel like every time they get to the point where it seems like they're getting out of trouble, they get into more trouble. It's impossible for this team to get a fair shot right now, which just stinks. But moving on, just a couple quick fun notes. Dave Strader is the new Dallas Stars play-by-play guy. This is awesome. I mean, Dave Strader is phenomenal. And I grew up listening to him because my dad was a Red Wings fan, so I grew up listening to Dave Strader on the radio as a kid. And I've gotten to know Dave Strader from covering NHL games and stuff like that. I just saw him 2 days ago, so it's pretty. And this wasn't mentioned at all, so it's pretty funny. This comes out now. It was like, "What's new?" "Oh, nothing," kind of sure. But we saw him, just saw him a couple days ago, in line getting a salad at the media table. But anyway, he's a good guy, and I'm a big believer in play-by-play guys making a difference in marketplaces. I've said this before, but I just think that like Pete Weber, what he's done in Nashville is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. You get some of the best play-by-play guys. You put a really good play-by-play guy into a market, and it's as important to me as adding a good player. It really just means that much to the city. So hats off to Dave. I'm really psyched for that. Other quick news here is where is it? I just had it here. Oh, man. All right. So many Phoenix things. So many Arizona things I had on my docket.
Well,
this is awesome. I wanted to show you guys this. I don't know if you saw this. The article put out by Adam Gretz, but about how the Lightning got Vasilevsky. Do you see this thing?
Yeah, it's
really cool. It's really cool.
The tracing of the draft pick. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely worth looking at. I like this. This is fun. So I'm gonna put this up here on the page for you guys. How they turned essentially a 5th round draft pick
in 2003, I think it was.
2003. So yeah. So here we go. I'm gonna put it over here. So as you can see here, at the top, right? They had a 5th round draft pick, which they traded, and they got Dan Boyle from Florida, which was like one unbelievable trade at the time because Dan Boyle helped them win a Stanley Cup. That was an incredible trade. I don't know how they got Dan Boyle for a 5th round draft pick. So that started off well, but then the 5th round draft pick, then Dan Boyle they traded for Matt Carl Weishart, a 1st round pick and a 4th round pick. So they turned that around pretty quickly. And then all the little branches that come off this are the players they got, for this 5th round draft pick. That was Boyle, because Boyle turned into a ton of players. Like Dwayne Rollison ended up there because of him. And he come all the way down here to the Vasilevsky, because actually, so Matt Carl gets traded to Philadelphia, right? And for a 3rd round draft pick, traded to Philadelphia with the 2009 third-round draft pick for Steve Downey, right? And a fourth-round pick, and Steve Eminger. And Steve Downey gets traded to the Avalanche for Kyle Quincy, who gets traded to the Red Wings for a first-round pick, who turns into Andrei Vasilevsky. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's more complex than Queen Victoria's family tree.
It is, but look at the players they got out of a fifth-round pick. I mean, that's pretty good. And this is not the cool thing about this is it's not just the the current regime. I mean, this was the last three regimes.
That was Jay Feaster. Yeah.
Jay Feaster. Then you got to give credit to
Brian Lawton.
Yeah, to Brian Lawton after that, right? And then Brian Lawton makes the Steve Downey trade. Which turns gets Ms. Malcolm. So yeah, this was something. I mean, this is really. It's just fun to trace those things and how players end up in different places. But man, they got a lot.
It's funny, because Adam Gretz also posted something regarding Anton Strawman, where Anton Strawman was traded from Toronto to Calgary for a second-round pick and Wayne Primo. The second-round pick was eventually traded to Chicago, and the second-round pick ended up being Brandon Saad. So the Leafs had Strawman and they had Brandon Saad, or they had a draft pick that turned into Brandon Saad and didn't get either one of them. So there you go.
Wow, that's pretty cool too. Yeah, I mean this stuff is always fun. I think it's I love tracing this stuff, and obviously it's somewhere along the line you have to make a really ridiculous trade, which they did right off the bat, to get Boyle. And I wish I knew the scenario behind that. I don't have any idea what Boyle was in Florida or why they moved him.
He was a fifth or sixth defenseman back then. He wasn't really a difference maker. They just got him as I don't know if it was a deadline rental or if it was but he was he wasn't anything spectacular with the Panthers, and then he just fit into that role perfectly in Tampa and was part of that 04 Stanley Cup team. So
yeah, I mean,
I want to say that the Bruins have the longest running trade train, if you will, because you can trace Cam Neely to Milan Lucic, which is that goes about 25 years or something now at this point.
Really?
Yeah. The Samsonov, when they ended up moving picks. They drafted Samsonov with the pick. Ended up trading Samsonov to Edmonton in 2006 with the draft pick that became Milan Lucic. So it's like one of the longest running trade trains in the history of the league, I think, right now.
Yeah, Dan Boyle only had 6 points in 25 games with the Panthers when he was traded to Tampa Bay. It was midway through the season, and he scored 20 points in half a season with Tampa Bay in 2002, and then started to perform at the level that we're used to seeing Dan Boyle perform at. So, yeah, I mean, he was essentially a depth defenseman with the Panthers, and he became a lot more once he went to the Lightning.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I love this kind of stuff. I really do. I think it's so much fun to trace. And let's get into some rumors while we're here, because the rumor chart's up and live on HockeyBuzz. And so this is definitely my favorite time of year. So I thought we would go to some players here at random maybe and check out a few. One of which is very interesting in your neck of the woods. So since we have Ty today, we're gonna do Drew Stafford, Carl Soderberg, and Mike Richards. Maybe let's do those three. That'll be good. Let's do this. I will put Chris Stewart in there. We'll do 4, Jay. All right, so I'm gonna add this into this thing. So and we'll watch here, because this is the rumor chart. As I said before, is only no wagering. It's only for fun, and you shouldn't gamble on it. But it's just that the idea of the rumor chart is simply based on conversations I've had with people. This is my perception as to where these guys could possibly go, and I adjust it when I hear something different. And it's really more of me trying to predict where they'll go than actually anything more than that. And sometimes it's cool because I can actually say things in here that I can't necessarily say on the blogs, or I can imply things by where I put them. So
Ty, gee, what a shock! A Chris Stewart to Boston rumor.
Yeah, I know that's back, and it was surprising, because then I tried everything I could to not have that be, because I talked, but again they said that they still have interest in him. Ty, do you see that at all?
I mean, I do, but with what money? I think the Bruins are so screwed right now in terms of what they can do financially. I mean, they're at the point now where they're looking at making trades just so they can re-sign both Dougie Hamilton and maybe Adam McQuaid, just to have defensive depth there. So I mean, it's just so tough for me to see the Bruins doing anything, especially Stewart. I think he sort of reinvented his resume to a degree with Minnesota Wild. He played well, much better than he did in Buffalo. I mean, that's to be expected in a way, but I think that he'll be, again, too rich for the Bruins' blood. I mean, I could see it if they shuffle some other money around, but I mean, on the right side right now, they seem pretty content with Pastrnak and Brett Connolly and maybe Louis Eriksson shifting, or still remaining on the right wing rather. So they might go in with that. I mean, I can see it to a degree, but there are a lot of moving parts with the Boston Bruins right now. That's why it's tough for me to figure out any way they add anything beyond a 13th forward or a 7th defenseman, really.
Right, for sure.
I'm not sure if Stewart can go into this market. I mean, first of all, this market is relatively thin, so players who didn't have great years might still be able to get multi-year contracts. But Stewart scored 11 goals playing in a top 6 role in Buffalo, and granted, there was not a lot of talent on the Sabres last year. He scored 11 points with the Wild last year. Didn't do a ton in the playoffs. He was hitting, he was active, but he didn't really score. I don't know whether he can demand a multi-year deal. He might be one of these scenarios where he goes to a team for 1 year, tries to put up big numbers, and then tries to hit it big as a free agent because he's in his mid to late 20s. I think he's 27 or 28, and then 27 years old. So I mean, he might be one of these guys who he can go to the Bruins for say $2 million a year, play in a top 6 role, score 25 to 30 goals, and then go strike it rich somewhere else. It might be a scenario that he'd be willing to put himself into. Either that, or as you have at Pittsburgh at 40%. If you imagine him playing with either Malkin or Crosby, put up pretty big numbers.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh is in dire need of this kind of player too, and Pittsburgh's in dire need of players in general right now. They have a huge issue there. I think let me stop this for a second, and I do really want to talk about the offer sheet craziness that's gone on too. I mean, I talked to people out in, at the NHL with all the different people that were there, and everybody basically said the same thing. That doesn't matter, Boston's going to match anything, and that's why I wrote the article that this offer sheet thing has become like the nuclear bomb of the NHL. That it's just a threatening thing, that it exists. And yet no one has used it yet, but that doesn't mean no one will never use it. And I just wonder, I mean, Boston's obviously put themselves in a precarious spot here. But I don't see anybody really being able to pull it off. Do you?
No. I mean, I wrote about this earlier this week where since 2006, there's been 8 offer sheets. These don't happen that often, and when they do, I mean, I linked this, in 2008, the Vancouver Canucks came out an offer sheet with David Backes. The Blues matched, obviously, and a week later, the Blues sent an offer sheet to Steve Bernier, who was at the time on the Canucks. Right. That was a total spite move, to get back at them. They really don't happen that often because I think GMs are afraid of that. They're afraid of knowing that, if the Edmonton Oilers were to give an offer sheet to Dougie Hamilton and he signs it, the Bruins match it, 3 years from now, the Boston Bruins are going at an offer sheet with Connor McDavid like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, right.
What I mean? Like, they understand the long-term ramifications of this, even the short-term ramifications. So I just don't see it. I don't see teams doing this. I think Philadelphia doing it with Shea Weber was really like a desperate sort of thing. Like, that was the guy they needed. They needed that guy post-Pronger, and that was the only time he was ever going to be in the market. He was more impactful than Ryan Suter, who was a free agent already going to Minnesota, no matter what anyone really offered him, I thought. Right. So I thought that was a different sort of need. And I do think the Bruins match any offer. Unless it's like a max offer, then it becomes a different story. But at the same time, I don't think anyone's going to do that for Dougie Hamilton just yet, as good as he might be as a 21-year-old. So I think they're mythological creatures, these offer sheets. I don't think they exist really. I mean, Vanek, Penner, Backes, Bernier, Weber. I can't really think of anything else.
Kessler.
Yeah, and so
Ryan O'Reilly. I mean,
yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think that's all of them right there, and they're just so few and far between because I think GMs understand sort of what goes around comes around, and I think that's a huge reason why these guys are friends too. I mean, that's a big thing with GMs. They're buddies. They don't want to burn a bridge.
Well, let me say this. I think that the offer sheet for a team like Edmonton, who has proven that they can do nothing more than lose, is insanity. Peter Chiarelli is not stupid. This team, even with Connor McDavid, is going to be challenged to be a 500 team, to even challenge for a playoff spot for the next couple years. He's a young kid. He's incredibly talented, but that team is not formed. They don't have a solid defense. They don't have a solid goaltending. Their forwards are very talented but very young. They're not a Dougie Hamilton away from being a competitive team. So them risking trading 3 first-round picks, which would be the compensation for a deal for Dougie Hamilton if they signed him for like $7 million, that's insanity, because you could be giving Boston 3 top 5 picks conceivably. Buffalo is not going to sign an offer sheet. Edmonton's not going to sign an offer sheet. Teams that are close, like the Islanders maybe, or Montreal, who have cap room, those are the teams that make sense in terms of signing offer sheets, because they'd be giving up picks in the lower half of the first round. But not Edmonton, not Buffalo.
This gained steam, talking to people, was a couple. There was a couple reasons it gained steam, but the main reason it gained steam was because, obviously Chiarelli comes from Boston. He's going to Edmonton, and he did discuss it internally, and everything's discussed internally. So that's kind of, you're going to talk about it. You got to talk about every option you have, right? So you're going to talk about it. But also, there's definitely bad blood between Chiarelli and Boston. That there were, as this whole thing's sorting out over time, I'm hearing more about how Chiarelli felt like he was being second guessed on everything he did, and he felt like he had no control over certain things, and he really is pissed off about a lot of stuff that went down there. And it's sort of, I remember talking to one person, and they said, after the firing happened, and they said, yeah, he was such a sitting duck. He had no control. There was too much pressure coming on from above. All that stuff's obviously coming from the Chiarelli camp. There's a lot of anger there. So I think that some of this is a little bit of that. Like a couple people said that they felt like this was a little bit of like a parting blow. And like you're right, Ty, to actually pull it off is another thing. And threatening is one thing.
What I do think is possible here, if we've seen this before, and the name was Phil Kessel. I mean, there was talk about offer sheets with Phil Kessel. It eventually ended up being a deal that was not, the compensation was not as stringent as the compensation for an offer sheet, but it ended up being, similar in terms of a return. They got 2 firsts and a second-round pick. If Chiarelli is interested in Dougie Hamilton, who's to say that they don't offer, Darnell Nurse and a first-round pick or something of that nature, a player who's on an entry-level deal who's expected to be ready for the NHL either this year or next year. That might make sense for a cap-strapped team like the Bruins, but I can't see Edmonton signing Dougie Hamilton for $6 or $7 million on a 7-year offer sheet.
All right, Ty, I'm the GM. I'm offering up Nugent Hopkins for Dougie Hamilton. What are you doing?
I still think they say no, just because they understand the need is on defense moving forward. They have Krejci and Bergeron locked up long term. Ryan Spooner, they think he's coming into his own. When I asked about this, I was told that the Bruins will trade multiple pieces off their roster to accommodate Dougie Hamilton's next cap hit. Whether that's a Milan Lucic or Chris Kelly, Dennis Seidenberg even. There are ways to trim the fat, is what was really expressed to me, and that they're going to do that. They don't want to trade him on Lucic, but if they have to, they haven't ruled that out. They understand that Hamilton's 21 years old and that he does a lot of things really well. There are areas they want him to improve on, absolutely. They want him to get bigger and more physical. But for what he does right now, his production, his advanced stats, his impact in his own defensive zone, it's much greater than that of your average 21-year-old. And I think they understand that. And that's why when it comes to a trade, they're not going to listen. I really don't think that anything is going to get them to waver on this. Maybe, just maybe, if there was some weird scenario where they were offered McDavid or Reichel, maybe, but that's not going to happen. I don't think that'll happen. There's no chance. So I really think that he's going to be here. The Bruins understand his impact. Their new GM is Don Sweeney, a former defenseman. He understands the impact they can have on a game and on a franchise. He played with Ray Bourque for years in Boston. So I think they view him as that heir apparent to Chara, and I think that's what they want to do.
And they should. They should. I mean, the one rumor that I heard in Chicago was that the Calgary Flames had serious interest in Milan Lucic, and it's something I've been working on, following up on. Probably write about more tomorrow, but there is more interest in Lucic than I thought there'd be. Yeah. For what it's worth, and I kind of think that his game is slowing down a little bit, and it might not be the best time. You're kind of buying high, at this point.
But you're talking about the prototypical power forward
right.
in the NHL, and you're talking about the champion of the power forward in Brian Burke, who's the team.
Right, exactly. And this Calgary was a team that and Calgary has the space to make it work. They could actually be, in on Lucic if Lucic is going to be moved. I don't think they'd want to move Lucic, but I think that, I don't know, I get mixed signals from them. You're closer than I am, Ty, but I get mixed signals on Lucic, like when I talk to them.
Well, they don't want to pay him what he might command. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, when I talk to some people, they said that Lucic might want to be a $7.5 to $8 million a year player. I mean, the Bruins are not going to do that. They absolutely will not do that, especially with his inconsistencies, from his health to his play. They're not going to do that. So this might be a situation where they maximize the return while they still can. I think, we talked about Calgary yesterday. They're at the point now, I think, where they can make that move. They can afford it in terms of the prospects that they send the other way, because they have a lot of young guys that are really starting to come into their own. And they can afford it from a financial standpoint, which is the biggest thing for anybody, especially when you're talking about a player with a $6 million cap hit. So, I mean, and with Calgary, this isn't the first time Calgary's been linked to Lucic. They wanted him in 2008 or 2009, whenever it was, when the Bruins wanted Ginla the first time around. So, I mean, there's no shortage of linkage between Calgary and Lucic and the Bruins. So I think there is something to be worked out there. It all comes back down to whether or not the Bruins realize we have to move on from this player. We have to maximize the return while we still can. But I think that is an absolute possibility. I think that's way more of a possibility than the Edmonton rumor, Lucic to Edmonton or Lucic to Vancouver, because those teams, I think they could add him, but he's not a pressing need. I think you look at Calgary, it's a forward core that has a lot of smaller players. They could really use Milan Lucic out there, clearing space in front of the net, being a menace along the boards, and that's really what you want. And I think a GM like Brian Burke could get in Lucic's ear and tell him, yeah, you can be that rough and tough, physical, do whatever you want, plow through guys kind of player, and he'll stand by it, which is, I think, sort of a problem in Boston, is that they've always wanted him to be more of a scorer and more of a responsible player than the, bat out of hell sort of rattling the boards at every turn sort of player he was when he came in the league.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. Let's go back to the rumor chart for a second, and then we'll also, because I also want to touch on Carl Soderberg, who is another player who it sounds like they're not going to bring back, from every indication. So much so I didn't even put Boston on here, which is rare for me in the rumor chart, because I usually think he's going to end up back there somewhere. But yeah, they're, Nashville, it makes so much sense in Nashville to bring him down there. It's just a big center. Who they can actually build around. If they get Ribeiro back, which I think they will, even though negotiations aren't going well there right now, I think Ribeiro and Nashville both realize it's the best situation for both of them. But Soderberg's a great second line center for them if that's the case. He's big and they don't have any depth there. And New Jersey is going to be a team, and you can see there are like three teams here, three different situations here. New Jersey is going to be all over free agents, I was told. They are going to be very active in the UF, and they usually aren't. So it's going to be interesting to see. But they have a lot of space. They have a lot of stuff they can do. So
they have to ice a team, Mac. I mean, they got half their rosters for UFA or RFA. It's insane.
Right, and you're not happy with the guys they currently have. I mean, Montreal again, another place that Soderberg would make some sense, because Montreal, they could use some bigger size up front too. And what are your thoughts on Soderberg as a player? What is his upside, Ty, do you think?
Soderberg is a great third-line center. He's an okay second-line center. I find he sort of wilted against tougher competition as the year went on, especially when David Krejci was out of the lineup. But this is a player that I think you can sort of utilize as a really effective third-line center on a great team. On a good team, he is your second-best centerman. He's a power play specialist. He will have a market for sure, and I think you're bang on with Nashville. If you put him, I know he's not a first line center, but you put him with Philip Forsberg, that could be a great 1-2 punch for the Nashville Predators. Right. New Jersey, I think, is a fit as well, just because they are not the deepest team when it comes to offensive centermen down the middle. So that could be a fit. I mean, those are the two teams that I sort of pegged as the obvious ones to go to. I would even throw maybe the Islanders in the mix. You know, Franz Nielsen's on the way out, and they need a third-line center. He's not as great defensively as Franz Nielsen would be, but that could be an option as well. I mean, I do like Carl Soderberg a lot. I think that he is growing into his own as an NHL player. He's learning how to use his body more effectively than when he first came in the league. You know, there are times where he'll go through some dry spells, especially goal-scoring wise, but his production as a passer is still very, very strong, I find. And he can really be your ace. You know, if you're a team that needs a third line center that can wreak havoc on these third pairings, especially in your own building, or run a second power play unit, he's your guy. I think he's very underrated in that regard. He's gonna get paid like a second line center, which I think is what made the Bruins sort of weary from the start. Because they don't view him as that, but he's gonna get paid. I know he wants to play. You know, just from talking with him, I know he liked being in a big sports market. That's the one thing that kind of about Nashville and New Jersey that makes me a little bit uneasy in a way. He likes being in a big market. He likes being in a city where hockey is the big thing, or they have other sports that are, you know, gigantically sort of involved in the community. I think that that's a big factor for him. But I mean, he's looking at probably, just from what I gathered from, you know, his camp and everything else. I mean, this is a possibility of a player that's going to make, you know, five for the next 4 years, or five for the next 5 years. You know, that's something that
possible.
It's crazy. I mean, it's the market, but he's sort of earned that with his early resume here in the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, a third line center who averages 31 assists over the last 2 seasons is a unique commodity. It's just like you said, Ty. The thing that's scary is he's probably going to have to be paid north of $5 million, and then the value of having that guy as a third line center. I mean, I think he's at best an adequate number 2. He's big, you know, he's good both ways, but he's not. I don't think he's prolific offensively enough to be a number 2. Number 3, he's perfect. Number 2, you know, you're getting into sort of Tyler Bozak territory where a guy is playing a position above what he actually is, and sometimes that's a detriment to a team rather than a positive.
But a second power play unit's a big thing. You know, that's a big issue that a lot of teams have problems with. You know, a lot of teams have good first power play units and second power play units not so much. You know, so that he is going to have value, and he's among the top centers that are available. You know,
and this free agent market. I mean, again, I'm not trying to be overly negative, but you know, Brad Richards is arguably the best center in this free agent pool. I know he's. You know, he's a little long in the tooth, but he's had an okay playoff. He had a pretty decent season with Chicago. You know, there are not many like impact forwards in this free agent pool right now. And
he looks so slow against Tampa, Mike. In person, he looks so slow. I mean, it's just watching him play. I'm just shocked. I mean, he looked slow last year in the finals, but against LA, but he looks so slow against Tampa. I mean, he's making the most of what he's doing. It's hard to argue, and he's still got.
You get my point, Ak. I mean, there's.
Oh, yeah, no, I get your point for sure. This is a league that's really shifting towards speed. Soderberg has speed. You know, I give him.
And he has size.
Yeah, I mean, speed and size, and being a center. I mean, there's a lot of teams like Edmonton doesn't. Edmonton, you know, he could be a good third line center in Edmonton. There's places where, you know, he could really go.
I think the center spot's sort of taken up in Edmonton between Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, Boyd Gordon. I mean, if anything, if they're spending any free agent money, it's on defense.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's definitely the case. But he's, you know, I think he's gonna get his money. And he's gonna get, you know, he could really thrive someplace else when he gets more responsibility, and hopefully he's not one of those guys who, you know, gets the big contract and kind of gets wigged out by it. You know, that's possible too, where you just suddenly feels like he's got to produce more than he does. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of David Backett sometimes. You know, like I kind of get that. That's his top side for him.
Maybe he goes someplace where Swedes are accustomed to going. You know, like you've got the aging Datsuk in Detroit. You've got Zetterberg there. You've got that core of Swedes there. You know, they're probably going to get rid of Stephen Weiss either by buyout or by trade. I mean,
he's going to be bought out from what I heard. I agree that Detroit would make some sense. Detroit's going to be in on some players. They're going to be in on Mike Green. You know, they're going to be in on some players. Detroit's going to try. I really expect Detroit to get one of the top defensemen this year when they didn't get any last year. I think they're going to be very aggressive. about that because last year they waited and waited and waited and ended up not getting anyone, and it really affected them to the point where they had to get Licky, and that sort of worked for a while. But if Detroit had one more good defenseman last year, they would have maybe gotten out of the first round.
I wouldn't doubt that they revisit the Phaneuf possibility.
Yeah, possibly. But now that we've reached the quota of talking about Dion Phaneuf, we can stop the show.
It's the new Thomas Caberlet. There you go.
Yes, let's throw it in there. And of course, another summer of Rick Nash rumors, which just makes me so happy that we're back there again. But there's going to be plenty of that. Rick Nash is absolutely available, and I talked to somebody that I really trust, and they said that they put the chances of him returning to the Rangers about 30%. The Rangers are looking at his cap hit as their way of getting out of this muck that they're in, and they're going to move him out. And he's got a lot of value. There's a lot of Rick Nash fans out there among general managers. So
I mean,
he's going to go. I mean, he could very easily end up in Detroit too.
He scored 42 goals. I mean,
I know, and he could end up in Detroit. And he did score 42 goals. But again, I mean, I feel about him like a lot of people feel about Joe Thornton. And I like Joe Thornton more than Rick Nash, but I think that a lot of people look at Joe Thornton as the guy who just falls apart in the playoffs, and you can't count on him. But yet Joe Thornton's always near the top of the scoring. He is always there. So I'd rather have Joe Thornton on my team than Rick Nash on my team. But that's just me. Because Nash, I think, just plays soft. He doesn't want to go into tough spots at tough times.
You can't really argue with that when he doesn't. It's basically been a no-show.
Yeah.
Columbus and the Rangers in 3 playoff series. He's been
it's been really bad, and I even heard Rick Nash rumored to Pittsburgh while I was away. So I mean, they may be there. You put Nash with Crosby, that's a heck of a combination, obviously, but they have to. And the other name to look at that we'll talk about in the future, just throwing this out as a teaser for next week, is Evgeny Malkin, who I could never expect Malkin to be traded, but I've talked to some people now that say it's not out of the realm of possibility, and I'm starting to get more and more people talking about, well, maybe they have to trade Malkin because of all the stuff that they need, and maybe this is the time to do it. Because right now the expectations are low, and they can sit back and say, okay, we can get a heck of a lot. You can get a ton for Malkin. Like I heard San Jose mentioned with Malkin, and and can you get Brett Burns plus more for Malkin? Brett Burns comes back as a defenseman on the Penguins. That's a great,
I will give you the team that makes the most sense because I think they're a big center away from, being. I mean, they're a legitimate Stanley Cup contender right now, but they're a big center from being an odds-on favorite to being a Stanley Cup contender, and that's Montreal. They need a big number 1 center. If they could trade 2 or 3 pieces.
Can you imagine Malkin in Montreal? That would be pretty crazy. That'd be a great fit. I know Columbus really likes him too, and Columbus has a lot of talent to deal with. They have a lot of depth, and I mean, it's trading him within division. That's the crazy thing about it, and trading him only a couple hundred miles away. So
Columbus has a lot of leverage in this upcoming draft deck. They got 6 picks in the first 3 rounds.
No, they are going to be. I mean, they're going to be a force. I mean, I can just tell you right now. You're not going to find anyone picking them out of the playoffs next year. Everybody's talking about Columbus is a playoff team for sure. They're really going to be good. People are picking them. People are already saying they're my favorite to win the division. And it's just. I said a lot has to go right. Obviously, because this team has faced injuries before, and
right.
But I think that Columbus is a real vital team moving forward. And I went out to dinner last night. Just the funniest aside before we get off the show here. I went out to dinner last night with Dave Cook, who's Taylor Swift's keyboard player. Taylor Swift's in town tonight and tomorrow night. I'm going with my family to see her tonight, and he's an enormous Hockey Buzz fan and an enormous Blue Jackets guy. And it's fun to talk to like somebody who's real. Like I spent a whole dinner with somebody who's just really into the Blue Jackets, which is really fun to hear. He knows everything about them, and I like the fact that team is finding its own way. So we'll see what happens there, but it's going to be good. Thank you, Ty. Have a good weekend, my friend, and you too, Mike. We will talk to you on Monday. Monday. I will be in Chicago on Monday. So but we'll be able to do a show probably at like the 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock Eastern time hour in that range,
Okay.
and we'll be talking about game 6 and possibly walking the Stanley Cup around that night. So we're gonna have plenty to talk about. I don't think we will, but I think I agree with Ty. You said earlier we're going 7. I think we're going 7 too, but we'll see. Remember, guys, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We'll talk to you soon.